When Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector of England, came to have his portrait painted, it is said that he said to the artist, "I want you to paint me, warts and all." Something similar might be said of the leading characters in many of the Bible stories. They were all flawed, and the pictures we get of them in these stories are, as it were, warts and all. They're not pious and holy in the sense that we often think of that. They are human beings with all their problems, sometimes that come from their own personalities, sometimes from the situations they find themselves in, or some combination of both. And this is no more true in the one story that we're going to look at in our Bible study today, which is the story of Jacob. For if anyone was flawed, Jacob was flawed, and yet God chose Jacob and dealt with Jacob to bring about a transformation in his life. When we look at the story of Jacob, it's not just a story about a person who is flawed. We find a family that has tensions and difficulties about it that are very common, really, to many families that we would see today. The family's made up of two boys, as well as mother and father. Esau is a man's man. You could describe him as an alpha male. He's an extrovert. He goes out hunting. His dad likes him, etc., etc. And the quite opposite of that is the reality of his brother, Jacob. Jacob's a quiet, introverted sort of person. Bit of a mummy's boy in a sense, tied to his mother's aprons. And his mother has to prompt him into sort of going in and engaging with the world, a world where Esau is perfectly at home, but Jacob is not. And the way she does that, she gets him to trick his brother. Now, Esau is fairly immature, really, as a human being. He wants instant gratification. And Mum and Jacob work on that and work it to their own ends. And so he ends up giving away both his birthright and his father's blessing. And it is when Jacob, pretending to be Esau, steals his father's blessing that things really come to a head. And in fact, Esau is so angry with Jacob, Jacob has to hot-foot it out of there because he fears for his life. But when he's at his wit's end, he lies down in a certain place and has a dream. It's a very famous part of the story. And he dreams that there is a ladder set up between earth and heaven with angels going backwards and forwards from God. He wakes up and recognises that something profound has happened. But then he makes a big mistake. He thinks he can make deals with God. So he says something along the lines of, "If you do this for me, God, or you do that, or you do the other, then you can be my God." Well, big deal, you can hear God saying almost. And so the rest of the story of Jacob is really how God deals with him in order to bring him to reality. And God begins to deal with him as he goes off to live with Uncle Laban. Now Laban, if anybody can be, is even trickier than Jacob himself. And they play a kind of complex game. Jacob wants to marry one of Laban's daughters, Rachel, but he's tricked into marrying the elder one, Leah, and he has to work various time frames to get both of them in the end. But Jacob in turn tries to diddle Uncle Laban by doing sorts of deals with the sheep, and eventually he has to flee from Uncle Laban as well. But eventually he has to come face to face with the consequences of this way of being, and he goes back to confront his brother Esau, and he doesn't know what's going to happen. And so he sends across a little river all that he has, his wives, his goods, his animals, everything, in order to try and placate Esau, imagining that Esau's going to be still raging mad with him and murderous. And then a man wrestles with him, or an angel, we could say. And they wrestle all night, and Jacob won't let the angel go until he's blessed. And he is blessed, but his hip is put out of joint. And so he hobbles across this brook and goes to meet with his brother. And so the way in which God deals with him is to make him confront who he really is. And that damages him, damages his ego at least. And so he is wounded. But it's a wound that brings reconciliation. For when he actually is confronted with Esau, Esau's grown up a bit, and Esau embraces him as a brother and is not murderous in the way that Jacob imagined he would be. So it's a wonderful story. It's a story of reconciliation, a story of struggling with who we really are, a story of God showing a person who they really are, and bringing them to transformation as well as reconciliation.